All right, everybody, welcome back. And as you settle down, I would like to invite on stage Dr. Beth Beadle, Dr. Lawrence Cord, and Dr. Hana Baroudi. And they'll be talking about the radiation planning assistant with us. Thank you.
Thank you to the GHOS organizers, to Aggie, Asim, and Dr. Shah especially. I'm here today on behalf of the Radiation Planning Assistant team. The RPA really has paralleled the development of GHOS. About 10 years ago, Dr. Korten and I were having a conversation in a hallway about the potential to use advanced technology to really improve the quality and accessibility for radiation in low resource settings. And one or the both of us have been at every GHOS since then, so we're excited to give you an update on that. So as Dr. Berger really set the stage yesterday as the conference began, we have a huge dearth of resources for radiotherapy around the world, and especially in Africa. This is a study that was published by Dr. Elmore, who was a faculty member in the United States with a huge interest in global health, who actually unfortunately passed away a few months ago of cancer herself in her 40s. She recently published that as of March 2020, only 52% of African countries had access to external beam, only 39% to brachytherapy, and no one had the capacity to meet the estimated need. And most of that was, throughout the middle of the continent. There's been a more recent study that was published in 2023 that looks more globally at low and middle income countries with large populations. So in this study, 23 LMICs with over 1 million inhabitants had no radiotherapy resources, which represented an aggregate population of 197 million people with approximately 134,000 new cases of cancer each year, and 84,000 which would require RT. 78% of those were in sub-Saharan Africa, with an estimated deficit of 188 megavoltage machines and 85 brachytherapy units. So the mission of GHOS and Radiating Hope continues. We need to get more hardware in the places that need it. But hardware does not fix access. We need more of us. We need more physicians, more radiographers, more radiation physicists, more registrars, because we have a significant dearth in clinical oncologists. So in this study, 8 countries had no clinical oncologist, and 27 countries had a clinical oncologist that provided care for over 1,000 incident cancers. 25 of these were in Africa. In a study that was published in the Red Journal now approximately a decade ago, there was an anticipated shortfall of almost 23,000 physicians, 13,000 medical physicists, and 39,000 radiographers or radiation therapists. So even when hardware is addressed, even when some center or country or Ministry of Health provides a machine, it does not fix the need for advanced and trained personnel, and that's a longer process. That's a longer process, especially with modern techniques. No longer do we typically do radiation with a plain film and a wax pencil, which made it fairly quick at determining a plan for our patient. With modern techniques, as many of you now can use, everything got more complicated, everything got more time-consuming. Now, in addition to diagnosing the cancer and deciding what treatment is necessary, the physician needs to look at the CT scan, prescribe dose to a tumor and critical structure maxima, delineate or contour those structures. That then needs to move on to a planner. In some cases, that's a physicist, and some a radiographer or dosimetrist. They have to create a beam arrangement plan, calculate dose to targets and normal tissues, optimize the process, and then present it to the doctor, who may or may not like it, and then determine whether edits are needed. The plan needs to be re-optimized, and then finally the MD needs to approve the final plan, which only kicks it back to physics for them to provide QA for that plan, determine any necessities to make that plan safe, and then finally treat the patient. So in addition to needing hardware, we need patients with these steps, and we need staff to do them. We identified several areas that would be ripe for automation or use of advanced computing techniques to try to streamline this process. You can imagine that instead of having a physician specifically delineate targets and normal tissues slice by slice, this could be done in an automated fashion. We could use advanced technology to determine best plans and get to an appropriate plan that meets our constraints more quickly. So we could automate contouring and planning tasks. We then could go through and try to identify high-quality plans so that we would minimize the need for additional iterations of review and replanning, and we could automate plan QA. So possibly we could eliminate a lot of these very time-consuming steps and help move patients from diagnosis to treatment earlier, even with a dearth of staff. So what we envisioned was a system in which case we could have impact by really streamlining this process and automating contouring and treatment planning in the middle so that we required less staff. The potential benefits are throughout the world and in every setting, but most specifically in low resource settings, where we thought we could overcome workforce shortages, reduce tasks for all team members, reduce variability between planners, between contouring teams, reduce the handoffs between team members, provide potential assistance when something is new to get to high-quality plans and treatments quicker, and increase safety by reduction of the opportunities for human error. But there are challenges of this type of system as well. Definitely there's staff concerns about what is their value if a whole bunch of these steps are now done by a computer. What if you don't know how to gauge whether a plan that comes out of a machine is a good one? And can we predict what are the modes of failure in this new system? We may reduce the opportunities for training if all of the magic happens and it comes out of a computer. We will need hardware resources for CT planning and linear accelerators. We require IT resources. We require a stable internet. And in several settings, this could be costly, especially if provided by a vendor. So we envisioned and created the system called the Radiation Planning Assistant, in which case we really tried to streamline the contouring and planning process, and those can be done independently. So the system could give you normal tissue contours if that's all you want. It could give you targets, for instance, elective nodal CTVs for head and neck cancer or for cervical cancer, or it could give you all of those in a high-quality plan, either as a one-step process where a CT goes in and a plan comes out, or in a two-step where the physician reviews and edits contours in the middle. We've created this as a website that's readily accessible, designed for scalability, with easy upgrades and maintenance, with a capacity of over 100,000 patients a year. In the last 10 years, we've written a grant that was exceptionally poorly written, I think we can say at this point, but was funded and allowed us to do this work. We've created modules for treatment of breast cancer, head and neck, cervical cancer, and whole brain. We've used thousands of patient cases, including contours and plans, and integrated data from multiple centers, including many of our partners that are in this room, and we can't thank you enough for that ongoing collaboration. We've integrated physician review to make sure the plans that are coming out of the system are robust. We've done multiple iterations of usability testing to make sure it's not too cumbersome. And we've done a failure mode and effective analysis to make certain that what is done in the system is safe and not ripe to make more problems than it solves. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Court.
Morning, everybody. As Beth said, we've been presenting this idea at GHOS for the last forever. Every single GHOS, I think. But now we have something, so this is good now. So I'm going to just give the sort of overview of what we have, what it can do, and what you can expect from it. Oh, and the two pictures, I should say, the one on the right was the first. Where's Jerry? I know you guys are here somewhere. Yeah. It's the team Ocean Road. They did the first independent evaluation of the RPA with their own patients, and then on the left is us at Bloemfontein, where we treated our first patient earlier this year. Conflicts of interest. So this is what we have. So, we've been working on this a while. It's been through several sort of different versions as we've refined our understanding of what's needed and what we can achieve. And now we've come up with this web-based system. So there's a web page that you can see at the top there. If anyone wants a demo over lunch, come see me. We can run it on my laptop. And the way it's run is you have to upload a CT and you fill in a simple web form just telling us what you want it to do. So it's basically the prescription and some sort of similar information. And we have this working for cervical cancer, head and neck, post-mastectomy, breast, and whole brain. I would say cervical cancer is the planning is probably our best offering because we have different versions of the planning that you can then choose based on what's appropriate to either your resources or your patient or your resources at that time. So we can do a bony landmark 4-field box, a soft tissue 4-field box where it contours all of the CTVs, ITV, PTV, all of this sort of stuff, plus normal tissues, and then creates the fields for you, and then a full VMAT plan. For head and neck, we just have VMAT for now, and post-mastectomy breast is tangents with superclav and then field in field. Oh, and the little QR code, if you want to read the paper, you can take a photo and use that QR code. It will take you right there. So in the spirit of collaboration, I thought I'd give you all a test. So here, this is just an example of the output of the RPA. So one of these is the clinical plan. One of these is the automated plan. Which one is the AI, is the automated plan? You can point. Mostly pointing to the right or forwards. Did you get it right? Yeah. So they're basically the same. The one on the right, the one on the left is the original clinical plan that was used to treat the patient. The one on the right is from our retrospective study where we were looking at the quality of the RPA plans. You can see the dose spread is a little bit less from the high dose, basically the same though. And so we've been going through this process for several years. We've done a lot of evaluation of the tools by physicians and other staff. This is our biggest study that we did, looking at the clinical acceptability of the tools. So we ran plans for 75 patients for each of the different treatment approaches. We then had them reviewed by radiation oncologists who were experienced in that particular type of treatment. So someone who was experienced in the 4-field box reviewed the 4-field box, for example. We had, because different places treat things differently and have different clinical practices, we had at least 3 radiation oncologists give us reviews for each treatment approach. In total, we had 31 radiation oncologists. I think everyone's donated their time to help us with this. Many of the people are in this room, as it happens. 16 institutions, 5 continents. So this was a real large effort to look at the clinical acceptability of these tools. And the results are shown on the right-hand side for the different parts and different aspects of these automated contouring and planning. The darker bar is the score percentage of cases that were used as is. So you would take that plan, you just go ahead and you could use it. And then the sort of the lighter color is the percentage that you would either use as is or make some small edits and review and then use rather. And you can see in pretty much all cases the use as is or after minor edits is up there at the sort of around the 90% level. And then depending on the type of treatment, the use as is immediately is sort of 90%, tends to be around 90% or so for the VMAT plans, and a little bit lower for some of the conformal plans where there may be some more subjectivity and sort of match lines and things like that. But we have done a study, at least for post-mastectomy breast, where we looked at how long does it take to make the edits, and it took about 10 minutes for treatment planners to make the edits that were being requested, and that's compared to 2 to 3 hours, to do the plan from scratch. This is that famous photo again of the Ocean Road team. And so this is just another example of review of what's coming out of this tool. And so here the Ocean Road team uploaded 30 patients and had them reviewed by 2 radiation oncologists, and they looked at clinical acceptability and also timing. And they found that 97% were used as is, and then it took 2 minutes to review, maybe edit the contours, and 4 minutes for the plan. So 6 minutes, less than 6 minutes per patient, which is a lot less time than it takes to create the plan. And the reason it's 97% is because there was one patient where the CT scan didn't go superior enough, and so the AI models couldn't understand the anatomy properly, and so didn't give an answer. So key milestones, like we said, we've been working on this a while. Feels like my entire life, actually. So we got our first project funding in 2016. A couple of years late, that was before, now everybody talks about ChatGPT and AI and deep learning and stuff. That wasn't really a topic at that time. So we had different tools that we had to pivot to later, to the deep learning. About a few years later, we got support from our leadership at MD Anderson, and that was to cover more of not the research side, but like how do you take this and go through like FDA process? How do you ensure that when we try and deploy this in different countries that we're not breaking local laws and things like that? So they agreed to pay for that. And then as part of this process, when we started this, we were really a research group, and we had to pivot ourselves a little bit to turn ourselves into more of almost like a mini company with a proper quality management plan, risk management plan, all of those sorts of things, so that once we went live clinically, we can support the clinical teams appropriately. 2022, MD Anderson's Global Oncology Program was launched. I'll talk about that in a second and why that's important. We then went through FDA 510K clearance in 2023, so that was a big milestone for us, and that shows that the dedication to quality and risk management for the tool. Also in 2023, MD Anderson finally announced, we've been talking about this for a while, but they announced that the RPA would be free. So the plan here is to offer this for free to places that can benefit from it and wouldn't have access to other tools. Another version of our quality management plan, so we're continually learning as we move forwards. Earlier this year, at the very beginning of this year, we got legal approval to go live in South Africa. Our first country. We've been working with the South Africans for a long time, since the very beginning. And then our first patient was April, May of this year. We've now got 3 places have finished their we have a full registration process where we do independent audits of machine output and treatment planning system settings. That's finished for 3 hospitals. There's 1 more in progress. And then I forgot, I didn't really mention, but these same tools, we're developing them for use in low and middle income country settings, but we're also using them in our own hospital. So we use them for about 350 to 400 patients a month at MD Anderson. So far, 15,000 patients have been treated using mostly contours that we've set up and are now part of the RPA. And now we're starting to expand to other countries. So the first thing we have to do is legal review, make sure we don't break any local laws and go through the appropriate regulatory processes locally, but we're expanding to other countries. Just briefly about MD Anderson's Global Oncology Program. So this was we started this 8 years ago. MD Anderson didn't really have a global sort of outlook at that point. Now they do, and it's really sort of explained, I guess, in this figure here, where they're trying to, on the x-axis, trying to increase the number of people they help, and on the y-axis, increase the amount that they help those people. And so RPA fits quite nicely into that, and what that means for us is that we get some internal funding. It's all about money, ultimately, but we get some funding internally, and that will strengthen our desire to offer this for free. or our ability to offer this for free. So that's just my section of this session. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mira and team, for this meeting just gets better and better. So this is amazing. So thank you. We're starting in South Africa, hoping to expand to other countries in coming months. If anybody wants a demo, like I said, come talk to me afterwards. And we're also expanding the portfolio. So I talked about cervix, post-mastectomy, breast, and head and neck. We're constantly building new tools that will go into RPA version 2 once we've got more experience from people using version 1 and giving us feedback. And so now Hana Baroudi is going to talk about our efforts to add intact breast, treatment planning for intact breast to the RPA.
All right, good morning, everybody. It's been a pleasure to be here and meet you all. I'll be talking to you today about how we create an automated whole breast treatment planning model as an example about how we do so for the RPA. Well, I'm going to start with our automated contouring model. So usually when we start to create these models, we try to choose or curate the data needed for training. In our case, we chose 104 whole breast CT scans from the MD Anderson database. And with the help of radiation oncology residents, under the guidance of the breast oncology group, they manually created contours for us to have a highly consistent data set. So using those CTs and the contours that we created, we selected an NN unit deep learning model, which is an AI architecture for medical image segmentation, and trained an automated contouring model for both the left and right side breast. Now that we have this model, we need to validate it for accuracy. And the way that we do so, usually we take a quantitative and qualitative approach. Quantitatively, we use metrics such as this dice similarity coefficient. And this is an overlap between the manual and the automated contour over their union. And usually a value of 1 means they have a perfect match. We also use some other metrics like the mean surface dice, which measures the difference between the surface variation between the manual and the automated contour. And the lower the value, the better the match is. While we also take a qualitative approach to evaluate these automated contours, where we show a physician the automated contours without showing them the manual ones, and we ask them to score them for clinical acceptability. And we use the scoring metric you see on the figure. So for our breast structure models, for breast automated contours and regional lymph nodes really had good scores where we had a mean dice similarity coefficient higher than 0.7 and a mean surface distance less than 3 millimeters. And in the box plot on the right, you can really see the distribution of our targets there. For qualitative review, 2 physicians reviewed and scored all the contours as clinically acceptable, meaning they had a score of 3 or more. That means you can use these contours after minor edits. And the scoring between the 2 physicians was very similar, which gives us more confidence in our contours. And this model has been in use in MD Anderson Clinic for the last year. This is also another test if you'd like to participate. One of these automated contours have been created by the model and the other were manually contoured. So if you think the left side is created by the automated model, please raise your hand. Oh, okay. I guess so. I guess we have a few winners. This is just to show you how close our automated model can be to the manual ones. Moving on to our automated treatment planning model. For intact breast, we created really a whole portfolio of different clinical methods to meet different clinical scenarios and machine capabilities. For 3D CRT treatment, we started with a whole breast irradiation approach that used tangents to treat the breast, but we also added a different combination of the lymph nodes to meet different clinical needs. And for comprehensive treatment, we have a photon option where you treat the breast and the regional lymph nodes with white tangents, but we also added the option to treat the internal mammary nodes with electrons. We also have a knowledge-based planning VMAT model for comprehensive treatment. So really a full portfolio of the different methodologies. The algorithm for 3D CRT starts with automated contouring, using the automated contouring model that we just talked about. Using those automated contours, the model automatically sets the isocenter. Then to select the beam setup, we use what we call a rule-based planning. meaning, for example, for the tangents to determine the best gantry angles, the optimal angle is selected based on the minimum dose to the lung. And the apertures are also based on these contours that we created. Finally, to optimize the dose, we use field weighing for the different lymph nodes fields. We also use an automated field-in-field approach for tangents. So really, it's a whole automated process from creation of contours to the plan. But when you start to think about it, how do we really start to create these models? So for me and for many others of my colleagues, we started by shadowing dosimetry, the expert planner, really to understand what are the manual tasks that need to be automated. And then we created some focus groups with physicians and physicists to get a consensus about what are the acceptable ranges of values of these variables that we need to automate, like the beam angles. And when we start to develop the algorithm, we do so in an iterative process. So whenever we start to create it, we continually test it on different clinical scenarios, different breast sizes, different arm positions, on free breathing and breath hold scans. And we continuously optimize the algorithm to account for these different changes. Finally, we tested our algorithm on 15 patients from MD Anderson to kind of see if they meet the symmetric validation, and we also did a physician review with that. We also showed it to other focus groups to get their feedback, but we also did external data set validations from 4 institutions worldwide to understand what are the nuances on different patient populations. This is a snapshot of our results. For our internal data set, we had 15 patients, like I said, with different clinical scenarios. The radiation oncologist that reviewed these plans scored them as 100% clinically acceptable, meaning that they are acceptable for use after minor edits. For external validations, we had 40 patients from 4 institutions worldwide, from the USA, Argentina, Iran, and Switzerland. And a physicist in this case reviewed these plans and scored them as good or needing edit, and has scored 79% usable and 21% requiring edits. For the dosimetric validation, most of the targets met the objectives, but we can see some variations in the IMN, for example. And this is because the algorithm prioritizes the protection of the heart over the coverage of the IMN in certain cases. In another case, the IMN is too deep to be covered by electron field, so you would move to a photon treatment in this case. And in some scenarios, the heart and lung were not met because you're using a free breathing scan where the breath hold could give us better results. Another test, this time it's for partial wide tangent fields. So if you'd like to participate and think that the left one is an automated plan, please raise your hand. All right, I think everybody guessed it this time. So in this case, we really were able to reduce those hotspots medially and laterally using our automated model. And this is the final one, I promise. This is a breast tangent field with adjacent electron field for the IMN treatment. And in this case, the left side is our automated plan, and you can see the similarities between the two with a bit of differences in the angles. So for future direction, we really, the next step for us is risk analysis. It's very important to determine what can go wrong to really create maybe some automated QA tools to reduce the occurrence. And when we're thinking about risk and our next steps, we, as creators of these tools and not users, there are very nuances that we can't really assess. And this is where I'd like to invite you to share your thoughts with us. There is a barcode on the screen that takes you to WhatsApp chat if you'd like to chat with us, or come after and talk to us during the breaks. We'd really like to hear your thoughts about what can go wrong if you were to use the RPA in your clinic. I think your input would be very valuable for us in the next steps. Other future direction with us would be also creating educational resources, really to reduce the off-label use and automation bias. And finally, we have to work with the RPA professional team to securely integrate the algorithms into the software. To summarize, there is a need for tools to help expedite the treatment planning process. The RPA is hoping to really help clinical teams scale their efforts to treat more patients. And like Dr. Kors said, we're continuously developing and adding new models for the RPA. So please feel free to connect with us, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
One question? One whole question? And more at lunchtime.
I will be quick. I'm following you already, as you say, probably for 10 years, or almost 8 years, and it's amazing. Two quick questions. What about prostate? And the second one is this the normal clinical practice at MD Anderson?
So the prostate, so we do have prostate contouring and planning. We're just right now in the final stages of testing with a variety of different prescriptions, but we have that set up. We don't have conformal, we just have VMAT for now, but we have it. Prostate's sort of ideal because you treat the prostate, so we've got it set up so that you tell us the prescription and whether you're treating pelvic nodes and some details like that, and then give us the CT, and it will create all the contours and the plans in one go. And that seems to be working quite well, I would say. So that if that is working as well as we think, then that will go into version 2 for sure. And you say, are we using these tools at MD Anderson? So mostly the contouring tools. So the contouring tools we are using for like 350 to 400 patients a month. We've got a whole brain planning that we're using at MD Anderson. The other tools are, the other planning tools are not, and that's mostly just, it's an integration thing because we use RayStation and our tools are based on something else. So, yeah.
A quick question. Yeah. You have done a lot of work in Southern Africa, and I'm wondering the major need of auto planning system in West Africa, Central Africa, and East Africa, where one oncologist is having maybe 40 million. Do you have any plan? And it may be the place to go much more earlier than later. Thank you.
Plans to expand everywhere? Is that I couldn't quite catch all the questions. So
plan to expand to the area of need, like East Africa, Central Africa, and West Africa.
We would we would love to. So anyone who's interested or think that there's a need in their practice, let us know. One of the things has been the logistics of it and also the legal aspects of it. So in a country that had multiple different sites, it was a good starting point to have the legal things clarified for the entire country, but we're more and more interested in going to places that have even greater need as well. So, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Beadle, Dr. Court, and Hana. Next, I would like to invite on stage Ashenafi Kumela, and we'll be talking about dosimetry and patient-specific QA. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. Radiation Hope. Yeah, my name is Ashenafi, and I'm from Ethiopia, Addis Ababa. If you allow me, let me say some few words about the center I'm working in. So, as you know, Ethiopia is a land of origin, and everyone knows about Lucy. And I'm working in Tukrambessa Specialist Hospital, which is actually the oldest radiotherapy center. I mean, it's like I've been 20 years or something. And here, I want to mention some new experience. I don't know if some other African are working like this. And yesterday, my colleague, Dr. Sonia, has a presentation on the interruption on head and the neck. And that report gave us an alert to act, to sit down, discuss, and find a solution and give way forward. So what we did are some 3 things. Number 1, we start to treat 7 days, including the weekend. Number 2, we do treatment 14 to 16 hours every day from Monday to Friday, meaning until midnight with 3 shifts just to overcome the problem that we have encountered. And we pushed the Ministry of Health to have more machine, and we owned another Linac machine, which is twins, and helps us to shift if there is any machine breakdown without interruption. And the third one, now we have like about 5 centers in different regions, and we made a memorandum of understanding with a different center in the country to like share the patient when we have got a problem. I don't know if I can say in Africa there is a country which work 7 days and 16 hours per day. So hopefully this will be a good experience to share. Having said this, let me keep discussing on my discussion. It is, as you have mentioned, patient-specific QA. And actually, the fourth thing that I would like to add is that we also sit down and wrote a proposal to do on IA staff things. We have a proposal that I will actually talk to the presenters a few minutes ago. If we are able to have that planning assistance system because of the low, source limitation and, as you know, very much patient load. We treat like 100 average, 120 patients per day. So too much patient load. 120 to 30 every day. So with these 3 shifts. So this indicates that how much burden of patient we have, and that planning assistant tool may help us to make things fast. So I've been listening to some presentation yesterday. For instance, the brain met a small lesion in a brain. So we also proposed to upgrade our machine to have a cone beam CT and start to deal with some small field dosimetries, small lesions, to treat small lesions with SRS. So for that, I've been thinking what are the important tools we need from dosimetry aspect. So this might help the radiating hope to understand what is a gap, or different guests from different continents, from USA, from Europe, so on and so forth, if there is any way to assist or support to help us do our best as a country. So, as you know, when we are dealing with the advanced treatment techniques that like IMRT, VMAT, SRS, and SBRT, we are dealing with some uncertainties in dose rate variation, dynamic gantries. So there are so many uncertainties. So we need to have a patient-specific quality assurance is mandatory. So for that, what materials we have? So 2D array detectors, the matrix, the map check are there, and currently we are using actually the portal dosimetry for patient-specific QAS in our center. So the 3D detector arrays, the Delta 4, the ARC check, and the Octavus are what are available, but this work relies on or based on the ARC check one that I will tell you in detail. So what are the main issue of this detector arrays? One is the low spatial resolution. The other is the angular response. And the third one is with geometry of O systems, like we don't detect the dose in the isocenter. What else? We have like a graphchromic film, actually, which is a gold standard because of its independence on the angle, whatever energy or dose rate change. So this graphchromic film, like, see directly the dose distribution on the target and its boundary. And nowadays, it is mandatory to use this film in commissioning and the other. But the limitation is so time-taking and very difficult to use in a busy department like our center, where we treat, as I've said, 120 plus patients. What is the aim of the work is to investigate the response of the spatial resolution of this arc check, and to determine the better criteria gamma analysis to make use of this arc check and make it effective in advanced technique. Materials and methods. We have that's this cylindrical arc check, and we used a CT somatone, and we used the ray station treatment planning for the task. In planning stage, we created a spherical target with different radii ranging from 4 millimeter to 15, and 2 asymmetric targets. And on this target, where we treatment were planned using the VMAT of dual arc, 6MF and 6MV, and flattening filter thing. And we used the triple C algorithm. Optimization was performed in order to obtain rapid dose fall-off on the boundary of the target. And a dose grid of 1 millimeter was applied, and 8 gray was prescribed on the target of the target. The design on the dosimetric measurement, the graphchromic film that I've mentioned has an advantage, or preferred, or set as a gold standard, because it is water equivalent density and energy and dose rate independence, and it is also isotropic response characteristics. So the measurement, film were positioned on coronal plan, passing through the center in the arc check phantom, and dose was delivered. Film is scanned after 24 hours, protecting them from light and heat, and an IPSA 1000 XL scanner was used with a dot per inch resolution. A single channel analysis was performed with a dedicated tool available in Sun Nuclear software in the system. The gray level of the scan film left was converted to the planar one by the map check using a previously determined calibration curve. 2D local gamma matrix were used to evaluate agreement between the calculated and measured dose distribution, as shown on the picture. And this is a dosimetric system of the arc check. We have about 1,386 detectors on the cylindrical shape of the arc check, and there are about 221 detectors in a standard field size of 10 by 10. So the dot is a spatial resolution, and you can have the point from this one. So the measurements were acquired simultaneously to the film radiation. So we put the graphchromic film on the plate of the in corner position, as I've mentioned before, and the detector on the surface and the graphchromic film has been irradiated at the same time. The data was taken, and then the 2D gamma matrix was again calculated in similar fashion with that of the data analysis. Passing rate of the film and arc check with standard and HD definition acquisition were investigated as a function of percentage dose difference and distance to agreement criteria. So dose difference criteria was investigated in a region of 1 to 5 and distance agreement in a region of 1 to 3 millimeter. External beam film passing rates distribution in clinically relevant regions, target plus boundary, were investigated to assess suitable threshold. Difference between the arc check and SD, HD mode acquisition were tested with Wilson's test. Correlation between radiographic, radiochromic EBT3 and arc check passing rate tested in order to assess the reliability of arc check provision. Level of agreement between the arc check and EBT3 films were found better, and the decision was made on this pair. So I will rush on the result just to use time. This one illustrates accuracy of the delivered dose at the center, left and right, for conversion between calculated and measured dose, and target size dependence of the thing. Dependence of the film on the dose difference percentage and distance to target agreement was again evaluated, and it was fine, as you can see here. But we have some problems here, as we also have mentioned. On the millimetric, less than 1 millimeter or so, we have some deviation. So we set a parameters for analysis based on this one. So the passing rate, the red spot, mostly fails in the low dose level, as you can see here. And sensitivity of film and analysis delivery errors of the target at the boundary was also observed. The arc check performance, all variables are significant predictor of the arc check passing rate, and the main factor is, as I've mentioned, the distance to agreement distance, distance to agreement on the film. So the clinically significant region, as I've mentioned, is here on arc check as well, which align with the film. Let me keep on going, and all the parameters. We use the StatSoft Statica to analyze all our data, and this here may be the conclusion that I will rush on. The action level, we said the action level of 75 was suitable for further investigation when the arc check passing rate with local gamma of 4% to 1 millimeter failed to achieve limit of the end. Thank you, and my time is gone. And maybe only 1 minute, if you allow me. I'm like transferring my maybe message to the Radiation Hope. One of my colleagues from Kenya yesterday mentioned the next country for this stage will be so as usual, we are competing in athletics. I'm getting in competition with my Kenyan neighbor. Radiation Hope will make this very important and useful program in Ethiopia next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashenafi. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Mac Longo, and he'll be talking about the International Cancer Expert Corps Scoping Project in Moldova. Thank you.
I'd just like to start by thanking Mira, Tom, Aggie, Asim, and Sandos for organizing another excellent Radiating Hope meeting here. And I'd like to thank all of the other speakers and participants for sharing your experiences and your time. I'm going to be speaking about some of my work with the International Cancer Expert Corps in Moldova, which is a country thousands of kilometers from where I live and work, and thousands of kilometers where you live and work. But I think some of the understandings that we gain from this are relevant to what we're all doing in our respective homes. I don't have any disclosures. This will be an outline of what I'll cover today. And we've all been speaking about the incredible and rising burden of cancer in the world and the mortality, the number of deaths that we experience each year globally from cancer. And I think Dr. Fisher and our other speakers yesterday really not only made the compelling argument for the necessity of radiation therapy to address that burden, but also for the possibilities of delivering safe and effective radiotherapy in many different settings across the globe. Dr. Berger, your talk yesterday really was an exhortation to address the yawning gaps in capacity, not only that exist in sub-Saharan Africa, but in many different corners of the globe. And of course, we need to increase capacity by increasing equipment, but it's also important to build the reliable maintenance and service infrastructure to be able to service those machines and ensure durability of the use of those machines. And as Dr. Beadle just pointed out, machines don't treat people, people treat people. We need well-trained radiation oncologists, medical physicists, radiation therapists, nurses, and we need to find ways to continue to provide continuing education, especially as we're adopting more complex radiotherapy techniques. One of the ways to accelerate this transition to build capacity is through transitioning from cobalt therapy to LINAC-based teletherapy. There are obvious advantages of transitioning to LINAC-based therapy. We can treat more disease sites in more sophisticated and efficient ways more safely. And there's a public safety indication for doing that. We don't have to worry about replacing cobalt sources and the possible security risks that having active radioactive sources pose. But there are also downsides and difficulties in working through this transition from cobalt to LINAC-based therapy. It's very costly. The infrastructure and maintenance, which I alluded to, is a much more intensive project when working with LINACs, and it demands that advanced training and continuing education. And this is an area where the International Cancer Expert Corps has taken up a significant interest. And before I describe the International Cancer Expert Corps, I just want to acknowledge Norm Coleman, who has been a mentor, colleague, and friend to many of us in this room and passed away earlier this year. He is one of the co-founders of the International Cancer Expert Corps, which is a nonprofit based out of Washington, D.C. in the United States, whose mission is to reduce the morbidity and improve the quality of life of cancer patients in low and middle income countries, but also those cancer patients in high-income countries that come from indigenous and underserved populations really in all corners of the globe. And there are many different approaches that the ICEC takes to addressing and living their mission through building mentoring networks, through developing equipment that is affordable and reliable to be commissioned in low and middle income countries. They've also really sought to better understand and quantify just where the gaps are in radiotherapy in the world. They've been a part of many different studies to characterize current capacity and gaps in capacity in sub-Saharan Africa and in southeastern Europe. And in doing this initial work, they came to recognize another region of the world where there are major gaps in radiotherapy capacity, and that is in former Soviet republics. In fact, in doing this work in sub-Saharan Africa and southeastern Europe, they came to recognize that Central Asia and the Caucasus regions have the second highest proportion of radiotherapy delivered by cobalt-60 behind sub-Saharan Africa. And there's a shared desire, not just with ICEC, but with these countries in this region, to understand what are the barriers to transitioning to LINAC-based therapy and to expanding access to radiotherapy in these former Soviet Union countries. There's also an express interest of the US government, in particular the Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Office of Radiological Security, to reduce the reliance on radioactive sources to treat cancer. And through kind of these mutual interests, collaboration was formed with Manjit Dosanjh being the lead to develop a study financed through the ICEC and supported with funds from the Office of Radiological Security to better characterize capacity in former Soviet countries. And this is termed the ART study. This is a map of the countries participating in the ART study. I'll just call your attention to one country that's not participating, is Turkmenistan. They could not get participation as it's a relatively closed country. And this study sought to be a targeted and detailed study of access to radiotherapy and diagnostic imaging services in the participating countries, and really gathered a huge breadth of information about not only capacity to treat cancer, but just cancer incidence itself, access to imaging, which I know one of our other speakers spoke about how important is that kind of initial diagnostic workup to what we do in radiotherapy delivery. Their current technology, and some of the difficulties that these individual countries are facing as they try to transition toward LINAC-based therapy. The ART study also sought to really leverage current relationships between member countries and to expand those that didn't exist. The primary way to gather this information was through sending surveys, kind of 3 different types of surveys. One geared toward practicing radiation oncologists, one geared toward regulatory authorities within these countries, and a third geared toward researchers. And these surveys were available both in Russian and in English, and were sent to over 107 institutions with, again, frequent points of contact to encourage participation in the surveys. The ART study was officially set to kick off in Kyiv, Ukraine, in 2022, but that event was canceled due to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and moved to a virtual kickoff later in that spring with an in-person workshop held in Kazakhstan in 2022. Surveys were completed at the end of November of 2022. And this group reconvened earlier this fall in September in Tbilisi, Georgia, as a follow-up. And a few weeks after this meeting, the ART study was published in the Lancet Oncology. And I'd encourage you all to check out the information as published. So I was supposed to talk to you about Moldova, and I've spent most of my time so far talking to you about other things. So let's get to Moldova. I know for me, I didn't know much before I was asked to travel to Moldova to assess their current capacity. But just to give a little bit of background, the country is wedged between Ukraine and Romania. It's about the size of Lesotho. Around 3 million people live there, similar to Namibia. The capital is Chisinau. It's a Romanian-speaking country and a parliamentary republic. It's considered to be an upper middle income country with a GDP per capita similar to South Africa, Algeria. And this project between the ICEC and Moldova was really sparked by this relationship that was solidified during the ART study. Moldova is receiving a variant true beam LINAC through the IAEA Rays of Hope program, and the United States Office of Radiological Security is funding the construction of the bunker. With this recognition of expanding capacities and potential for advanced treatment techniques, the Moldovans recognized that they needed some help and support and expressly asked the ICEC to provide that support. And this is what sparked the development of this scoping project. The title of the scoping project is to develop a sustainable LINAC adoption in Moldova. The aims of this project are to better understand and assess the current and anticipated radiotherapy staffing needs, research impacts of future technology expansion within Moldova, and to importantly identify resources and partners for Moldova to support successful commissioning and operation of their LINAC in the years to come. The ICEC facilitated the expertise, and this was done in collaboration and with funds from the US government, Office of Radiological Security. Those who participated in the scoping project are ICEC staff, including the executive director, Nina Wendling, and the ICEC board member, Manjit Dosanjh, as well as ICEC experts. I've bolded those who actually traveled to Chisinau as part of the scoping project, but Edvard Gerskovits, who's a physicist in Tallinn, Estonia, Jamal Hedar, who's at King Hussein Cancer Center and was at our 2022 GHOS meeting, and myself. In anticipation of the meeting, we reviewed data that we acquired from the ART study to better understand where Moldova is today, and they do currently have an operating cobalt machine, understand their current staffing capacity, and prepare for an efficient and effective visit. The visit took place in late January and early February of this year. And we met with a huge array of people working within the Cancer Center in Moldova, including the Public Hospital Oncology Institute administrative staff, representatives from the medical school in Chisinau, as well as a meeting with the Moldovan Minister of Health, Mrs. Ala Nemarenko. We toured the facilities, we observed the clinical operations, how did they deliver radiotherapy in Moldova. We spent a lot of time with the clinical radiation oncologists as well as the physicists. And then we had a combination of larger group and small group meetings to discuss what we had seen, to ask further questions, to learn what their questions were from us, kind of making sure that we met at the end of each day to kind of summarize what we had done and make plans for the next day, with a final summative meeting on the last day of the visit. And these are just some photos of the group that we were with and what we did during our time there. So what were some of our key findings during our scoping visit? Well, in regard to the radiation oncologists that were there, they're very comfortable with 2D and 3D planning, but they hadn't been able to use their TrueBeam to deliver IMRT due to lack of comfort, as well as lack of software equipment to utilize the machine in that way. That said, they're in a good spot to learn to adopt more advanced technologies with mentoring and formal training. Their lead medical physicist had spent over a decade in the Dominican Republic and had worked through the transition from 2D radiotherapy in the Dominican Republic to IMRT. And so that was really a big asset as they are hoping to expand their technologies and their delivery capacity in Moldova. One of the biggest challenges that we recognized was machine maintenance and service. Moldova pays the most out of any European country for replacement parts for their LINACs. And they have to go through a tender process for any replaced parts through the government, which really leads to extended machine downtime in Moldova, and that's a major challenge for the country. They had a nascent quality assurance program and peer review that they were expanding. Really very limited multidisciplinary tumor boards and disease site-specific treatment groups. And then the medical school is hoping to transition from a clinical oncology program to separate radiation oncology and medical oncology training programs. So after the visit, we all got our notes together and scheduled 2 virtual meetings, which is no small feat when you're incorporating interpreters in Russian, Romanian, and English, and then send a number of follow-up questions via email. And what were some of our key recommendations from our finding there? For the clinical radiation oncologists, they'd really benefit from formal training offered through the IAEA, ESTRO, UICC, But then individual mentorship with radiation oncologists in the region. Romania is a great partner country, and certainly the shared language makes that easier, but also seeking mentorship from other centers globally. Similar to the medical physicists, not only do they need that formal training to adopt these advanced techniques through international organizations, but they would benefit from ongoing and consistent mentorship. Machine maintenance and service, we discussed how that was such a huge challenge in Moldova and led to really extended machine downtime. Edvard Gerskovits, who is an IAEA expert, recommended the development of a framework contract for obtaining common supplies over a 3 to 5 year span, and then developing a pool of donor supplies for those commonly needed parts to reduce that downtime related to needing to get the spare parts. We recommended continuing to expand their quality assurance, especially as they're adopting more complex techniques, and also develop near misses, morbidity, and mortality to understand from when treatments don't go as expected. We think that's important. Again, we encouraged expansion of multidisciplinary tumor boards and treatment teams, and then are very supportive of their transition to formal radiation oncology and medical oncology training programs, and have offered support from our respective institutions in doing so. We were able to deliver this final report just before the meeting that we held in Tbilisi, and that offered an opportunity for us to meet face-to-face with them, clarify some of our recommendations, make some edits, and then really discuss next actionable steps. So why am I presenting this at GHOS? I think there's a lot of shared experiences and learning that can come from this. Certainly, there are shared challenges. The former Soviet republics are very diverse regions, as is sub-Saharan Africa, with different languages, cultures, different geopolitical circumstances, healthcare systems, access to resources. Some countries are really leaping ahead, others are pretty stuck. And certainly there's this huge rising burden of cancer. And I think with these shared challenges come shared opportunities. Despite the diversity between these countries, there's also a lot of shared ties, just like there are a lot of shared ties between the countries of sub-Saharan Africa, and connections that can be leveraged. And the commitment to caring for patients is as palpable in the room with our colleagues from the former Soviet republics as it is in this room. I think this project has really identified how critical it is to have a lot of different parties with stakes in the room, involving ministers of health, because those are often the people that make the financial decisions, U.S. government and other governments that help to fund these health efforts globally. The IAEA's participation in this project and their underlying support has been really critical. And then working with industry to bring everyone together, in addition to us clinical oncologists and those who are in academics. I think it shows the value of mutual mentorship. It's not just folks from high-income countries mentoring people in low and middle-income countries. It's people in all countries mentoring each other. I have some personal work with the folks in Uganda and have seen what they have done, and they can really help others that are a few steps behind them. So I think recognizing those possibilities for mutual mentorship is important. I think this ICEC scoping project could be expanded to other sites and modified to do so. And it's important that we talk about these issues. We raise the awareness, whether it's through meetings, whether it's through publications, whether it's through social media. Just we need to let people know all the good work that is being done across the globe. Now, there are limits to this. How do we scale up a scoping project that was done in a small Eastern European country and apply it to countries all over the world? Money is always a challenge, and there are limits for that. And then there are the unpredictable external forces, conflict, climate change, that we're all struggling to live and work through. I want to just, as I near my conclusion here, just recognize the power of meetings like this to bring people together. I was able to reconnect with partners in Uganda that I spent a very formative month with as a resident in 2014 at the last GHOS meeting, and we've since been able to work together in supporting the Uganda Cancer Institute Radiation Oncology Fellowship Program. They hosted one of my residents, Dr. Shadstedt, in May. Dr. Jamal Khader, who I worked with on this Moldova scoping project, was at our last meeting. So there's no substitute to having the conversations and strengthening connections and making new ones, and a meeting like this really fosters that. I'll just conclude about, we have a lot of work to do, and I think that the ICEC's commitment to better understanding capacity gaps is really important, and I think that, I hope that it'll lead to greater work to come. So thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Longo. I know you all must be hungry now, so time for a lunch break. We will see you back at 1:10. Thank you.